everybody, how you doing? This is Marco Giunta from TechReact, and we've gone Hollywood. I
Woohoo!
know. Whoa,
Gone Hollywood. What does that mean?
So we're broadcasting live on the boob tube here, so you can not only get us on your podcast, but now you'll be able to get us on video too. You can see how ugly Steve Webster is.
At this time in the morning.
But on the other hand, talking about pictures, Mr. Chris is not turning his camera on, so
I think he's a smart one.
I know, right?
I'm traveling incognito.
Traveling incognito. So again, this week we have Steve Webster, David Levin, and Chris Kieff. Hi, guys.
Morning.
Good morning.
And we're talking about enterprise IT news again. This week, you can catch the news on our page, TechReact.com, where we bring all the news of the week on one site.
All the news?
Yeah, well, there's no Benghazi stuff.
We're really clever, you know that?
Well, the new site's looking good, by the way, too. Nice job.
Thank you.
It is.
So, TechReact.com is the site, and what we try to do is bring all the news that's happening in the enterprise technology in one place. You're not going to see whether your iPhone is curved or straight or yellow.
Oh, you got the yellow?
Unless it's the enterprise feature. So, Marco, did you just get back to your house from waiting online overnight to get your iPhone 6 Plus?
You're gonna find this funny, but I actually do not have an iPhone 6.
Oh, my God. Are you
Is it
all
in the
right?
mail?
Oh, you suck, Steve. Is that the Plus?
No, it's just the 6.
Oh, okay, well,
Jeez.
Okay. And your thoughts, Steve?
I like it a lot.
Why?
It's about time.
Okay, good. Well,
The form factor, I think, is much better.
all right. So we'll hold that back for a future episode when we turn into 16-year-old girls worrying about our phones.
Welcome to the world of large telephones.
Yes, exactly. So,
Let me know when yours gets waterproof, okay? It's pretty cool.
I think we
I'm
should do an episode titled "Large Telephones, Small Pockets."
There you go.
Yeah.
all right. So, this week something interesting happened again. I mean, we've been tracking this for a couple of weeks with Home Depot. And finally, I think it broke this week, but it's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
So Home Depot says they have 56 million lost 56 million web addresses and information and credit cards. Does everybody have the same story?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't remember how big Target was, but it was the same issue. I think it was smaller, right?
Yeah, I think Target was like 30 million.
Probably because Home Depot's probably got a lot more customers.
I was going to say it was 30 or 40.
I'm sorry, Steve? Steve?
It's 30 or 40 with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. I mean, what is the problem that all these companies can't handle it? And Steve, do you remember back in 2005? We were talking to TJ Maxx and Staples, right? 2005?
I remember that. I try to forget it, but I remember.
Yeah, and we were getting... You and I actually did not take that TJ Maxx because of all the breaches in their password was back then, right? Their, PCI.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, they're having trouble with PCI compliance way back in the day.
yeah, so it hasn't changed much. Why are these companies having these kind of problems? David, what do you think?
I think it's a good question. I've been trying to figure that out myself because I think they actually have decent processes in place for security. And, with all the auditing that goes on with PCI compliance and all that other stuff, I would imagine that they're doing things as well as they could be done. I think the argument is whatever they're doing, it's not good enough. Once you have a giant brand and a website and an infrastructure, there's always people that want to hack into it and figure out a way to breach it. And no matter what they do, there's constantly going to be somebody figuring out a way to get in, and these things are going to continue to happen. So, I'm not really sure why this is happening, what they can do to stop it. I think it's going to continue, and this is going to be a trend that's going to get worse and worse. I think the key thing is for people to realize this isn't people not managing their Home Depot, Target, Walmart, whatever accounts online properly. It's not a web problem. This is an infrastructure problem.
Hey, Chris, you've been dealing with hacked accounts as our social media correspondent here today. You've been dealing with this for a really long time, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big challenge, and I think it's just going to continue on. It's no matter what you do, the better lock you build, the more picks people are going to build to try and break your lock.
Well, is it that, or is it that the locks that they're building are, not enterprise ready? Steve?
Yeah, I think it's not that the enterprise locks aren't ready. I think it's the lock pickers are getting more and more sophisticated in how they can break through those locks, probably faster than the enterprise. Similar to our story last week on consumerization.
Hey, Steve, I'm losing you a little bit. I'm losing you a lot of bit. Is everybody
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was fading in and out.
So I think that the challenge is that the criminals are getting more sophisticated and they're aiming higher. There's in the security industry there's two basic kinds of threats, and one is your casual hacker, your high school or college student who decides he's going to target you and crack your security and see what he can find there, and the other is the persistent threat that is going to break in and not necessarily do anything and be very careful and looking for ways to collect something that could be very advantageous to them. And that's what happened to both Target and Home Depot. It was a persistent threat. It wasn't somebody who hacked in and took stuff and ran away. A smash and grab, if you will. It was more of a very sophisticated, well-funded group of people who decided to get in and very carefully go about what they were doing. I think as opposed to like a smash and grab kind of a thief, it was more like a cat burglar. And that's the challenge. Those are the scary ones.
So it seems to me like every single week or every single month we have one of these issues, right? We had the iCloud last week, and Target before that, and a couple of here and there. We had Marcus, not Marcus. What's up the name of the store? Levin and Marcus. No, what's and Nordstrom's.
Anyway, yeah.
One of those stores. And now we have Home Depot, and we're not. I mean, I am not. I'm not blaming anybody on this, any one particular thing. I just don't know if this is something that it's a problem that is not being addressed, or is it just that that.
Well, I think there's one big issue that is hanging around out there that is in the U.S. infrastructure, and that's that the greatest majority of the cards in the U.S., credit cards in the U.S., don't have chips.
Right, they're still old school magstripe, and those are really easy to clone and hack, and they can get into the systems by cloning one of those cards and getting in.
But is that,
so
you
couldn't.
This time? That's what they
You can't. But the kind of hack that happened in Target and Home Depot would not succeed in Europe because everybody's got a chip in their card, and the chip generates a random account number each and every time. And well, it's not random. I guess a predictable number, but So if you hack into the database, then there is no fixed card number that you can do something with.
Right. So having these millions of credit card numbers is kind of useless for them.
Right.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I don't, because they're not storing this stuff, and the whole way PCI works, they really can't store this stuff in their systems.
Right, but you're still getting a lot of information. I mean, Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's debatable. As sooner or later, the criminals are going to catch up with a chip technology too, right? It's only a matter of time.
But it's not, the chip
They
technology.
they can't do much about it.
Yeah, so the chip technology is not just the only issue. I think the other issue is that these guys are getting into the database and getting all this information. I mean, just think of all the information I can get. Even if I don't have credit card, I can get so much other information about you.
Yeah, without a question. That information is out there running around.
How to protect the data?
Well, frankly, I just don't believe that enough is being done to protect the data, and I think that that's at the system side. And how come we don't hear these problems in other parts of the world?
Well, I don't think we're going to hear about a 20 million credit breach in Europe because we don't hear about all sorts of stuff. So our news is terrible at reporting things that are going on.
Right, but I between the Al Jazeera and BBC, that's where I get my news, and I don't hear of anything like that from anywhere in the world.
Well, I think it's kind of low-hanging fruit, right? If you can get 20 or 50 million credit cards from the U.S. and they work, as opposed to getting 20 to 50 million, transactions where the numbers that you've got access to don't do you any good in Europe, why would you bother in the U.S.? The whole thing is the challenge that, what's easier to do that'll get you something, and right now it's hit the U.S. and a big chunk of the problem is our infrastructure. Every place you go has got a mag card reader, a mag stripe reader, and you've got to change out all that infrastructure, 20 or 50 million or whatever it is card stripe readers for the new cards, and that's a tremendous expense. I know that Target's probably going to do it, and probably Home Depot's going to do it following these problems.
Well, what if you had accountability? What if those people had accountability to getting, to make it secure?
Well, they do, right? Yesterday we got an email, because we've been steady customers of Home Depot. Right. And yesterday we got an email from Home Depot saying we've got one year free credit reporting and free, identity theft protection. And that's my second year because I've got that already from Target.
Right.
So.
But just follow my thinking here, David. See what you think of this. What if the next time there's a breach, they have to, because I can't even imagine how much money is being spent between all the new credit cards going out, all that kind of stuff. What if there was a much larger penalty? I know this sounds a little bit liberal down to your side, Chris. But what if there was a penalty for getting that done?
Well, a larger penalty, I think, is obviously can help, but I think it would be better to just fix the problem and make it something that they just legislate that has to be done. It's just one of those. It's one of those problems where, infrastructure is infrastructure. Every company doing business where they're taking credit cards or processing financial transactions and their business has any kind of opening to any kind of WebSocket connection, they're at risk. It's a bigger problem than just, Home Depot's credit card database getting out there.
So you think it's just too many people getting access because they have to have access for the integration?
Right, and I think the key thing is to continually be forced to audit, upgrade processes, upgrade systems, and continually check these things for breaches. That literally do penetration testing, or pin testing as they call it in the industry, right? To constantly test the network, the infrastructure, figure it out. Hack your own systems, make sure nobody can get into it. And those should be the best practices, need to be expanded beyond where they are.
Yeah, but everybody does that.
To a
I can tell
degree.
you, I've got penetration tests going on right now with multiple customers, and it's standard practice.
There goes our rating.
I agree with you. I've worked with a couple of these large retailers in the past on infrastructure projects related to POS systems, networks, integration to their back-end systems, and all that fun stuff. And I can tell you, I was appalled at what I saw was actually happening with how things were actually set up versus what was advertised. Big difference. I'm not saying Home Depot's in that classification, just a complete disclaimer around that, but I've seen some other brands, not specifically Home Depot, that have had just their infrastructure is just a joke. I mean, that's all I have to say about it. Maybe they're locking down databases, but they're not locking down the point of sale. They're not upgrading fast enough. They're not doing what they need to do with those endpoints.
Well, I think that, if you take a look at, they just lost, 50 million cards, which means they had to buy 50 million customers protection for a year. That's got to cost $5 to $10 each. So that you're talking about $250 to $500 million just to protect the consumers who got hit. Right? That's I don't know what else you could do. I mean, if the government isn't going to impose a $200 million fine, not for something like this. I mean, they don't even impose $200 million fines when you sell a drug that kills people. So.
Right, and the point is that's not going to actually protect anybody, right, from having this problem happen again in the future. All that's doing is it's kind of like, all right, my bad, I'm going to give you some protection for the next 12 months. So if somebody tries to hack you or get into your information and use your identity or clone your card, you're at least protected for a year. That also gives those companies. I'm sorry, one last thing. That gives those companies that are providing you with the protection, some of those people like yourself that have it may say, hey, I feel pretty good having this. Why don't I subscribe to this? So it's actually a sales opportunity for the companies providing that protection to sell more of their service. Sorry about cutting you off.
No, that's quite all right. I was the one who was being rude. But in any case, I think that, the pressure is going to come from the banks and the credit card companies, because I'm sure that Visa's getting sick and tired of having to send out new cards, and there's a $5 pop every time.
That's my point before. That's what I think there should be some kind of way that those companies, because what they're doing is they're charging you for it. There should be a way that those companies can recover their cost. Steve, what do you think?
Yeah. Sorry, I cut out for a little bit there. So
it's okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, giving people the credit protection, right? There's got to be better ways for these companies to address that issue, right? And for these companies to recover costs.
So I think until it hits them in the wallet, where customers stop coming back to the store because they've lost credibility, they've lost confidence and credibility in that brand, and they go shop someplace else, until that happens, I don't think it's really going to make a big difference.
What about that article that you showed me about what to do when data breach occurs? Is that being done?
Well, I think some of that is being done. It's a pretty good article, I guess, on how to attack, how to handle a data breach, how to assemble kind of a strike team, how to make sure you're protecting the right data. But I think the inevitability is you're going to get hacked. And I think the third point in that article, which is have a communication plan, it probably should be number one on the list, right? Because I think that's the issue that most consumers are worried about, right? What is going on? I mean, it took Home Depot a long time to finally come out and say, okay, this is what happened. This is how many cards were breached, right? And that creates a lot of uncertainty, fear about how they're handling the breach. I think those things can be done much better by corporations than they're being done today.
So, do you think it's just one final point on this. Do you think it's being reported when it is because of when they figured it out, or do you think it's a PR situation or that kind of situation where they don't want to, they want to make it, push it out? Chris, you're probably better at that. Answer that question.
Well, I can tell you that classically in contracts of this nature, there are incident reporting requirements where if you have a breach and you have to and it involves somebody else's data, which in this case Home Depot's breach involved Visa and MasterCard and banks and stuff, then you have to report that breach to the people who own that data. You have to do it in a certain amount of time, and then you have to follow up and tell them what you're doing and how you're fixing it and what the remediation is, and then who's going to pay for the repairs that you have to make and the compensation. So just like in this Home Depot instance, everybody's getting everybody who got their card breached is getting a 1-year free credit watching service. All that kind of stuff is spelled out, and it and so anybody who's handling any kind of a reasonable amount of data is dealing with that kind of stuff. You've got a policy in place. You know what constitutes a breach. You have procedures written out already that say, okay, if there is a breach, this is how we go about identifying it. This is how we go about notifying people who are involved, and then how we go about repairing it so that we close the door and make sure nobody else can get in, and all that kind of stuff. So it's all standard stuff that people should have in place. And to my knowledge, Target and Home Depot both have that kind of stuff in place. So it's 101 for the security people. You got to have this. This is entry level stuff that you got to take care of.
So you think there's a process?
There is for any enterprise grade company. There is already a process in place, and they hope and pray they don't ever have to use it.
So before we say goodbye to our audience on our podcast and continue on with our hangout, and if anybody wants to join us in our hangout, it's in our TechReact Google Plus page. Are we saying that this is just a cost of doing business, Steve?
I think it's becoming a cost of doing business.
And is the responsibility at the consumer level, or is it at the enterprise level? Because we're picking on Home Depot because it just happened, but this is by no means a Home Depot issue. I'm sure this. By the way, I forgot to say, JPMC happened last week, right?
Yeah. No, it's definitely not just an enterprise issue. It's I think it's shared by both the enterprise and the consumer.
Well, the effect of these is not really at the consumer level. There's nothing the consumer can do to protect themselves from this other than like subscribing to a data protection service of some sort. But these breaches are happening at the aggregate level. It's not at your local store. It's happening at corporate. So there's nothing you can do to prevent it.
But it's certainly happening at that level. But I think this is an issue of not that necessarily, Chris, the consumer can do anything, but they definitely it's a buyer beware situation, right? They need to know this is happening. It's happening faster and faster, right? So they need to know the fundamentals of what to do when they see something like this happening.
Right. For example, how fast do you run out to get a new credit card?
Yeah.
That's just standard best practices.
Whatever it may be.
Yes, I'll buy into that without a question. You should know how to react to those issues.
Yeah.
Interesting.
When do you change all your passwords? That's another one.
Yeah.
Does it really make a difference? Right.
I need to ask that question. I have that in my notes here. Does the password actually make a difference? Because we're under the belief that a lot of these things are hacked through the password, but they're not really hacking, grandma's password here to get into this, right?
They're going around it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not the fact that Chris's password is 123 password. Oops.
Got to change your password, Chris.
Was I not supposed to say that?
All right, 321 password. 321 password. All right.
But is that the case? Because we're trying to drill into everybody, make sure that you have two means of recognition. We have 45 letter password and use uppercase, lowercase numbers and smiley face. But is that really the issue? Does that really matter, Steve?
No, not in these cases, right? That they completely circumvented all of the protections you as a consumer may have put in place.
Does it ever matter? Does it really ever matter? Like, I'll tell you what. One of my websites, marcogiunta.com, is getting pounded for the last 3 weeks. I have people trying to log in.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
No.
If you're watching this podcast, there's no username admin on my website. So we're getting pounded like for the last 3 weeks. Every 7 minutes, I get an email. Somebody's trying to break in. Right?
So that's not the kind of threat that caused these things, right? That's a low level. That's a high school or college student who's trying to hack your website.
Right. No, I realize that.
Yeah.
But is that the kind of thing that it is? Is somebody coming in at the lowest sysadmin level and trying to break in at that level to these enterprises? Or are they physically finding exploits within their Cisco routers or their firewall? What exactly are they doing?
It's the latter.
Yeah, I think Target was actually malware that was installed at the store level, but it was, yeah. So
what is being done about that? What is Cisco and because that's what I'm failing to hear. Like I've read all the reports, I've listened to all the news. There's nobody that says this was a problem with this type of router, and if you have this type of router, you're in trouble.
Nobody will say that. That's the problem. They'll just come out with an iOS patch, or one of the other companies will come out with a patch for their router, and that will close up that exploit, but that doesn't mean there aren't 100 other ones that somebody could find.
That's really my concern. That's where I was going to. What should we be doing about it? As a conclusion here, because being in the enterprise, I see a lot of things up there that are not updated. I see a lot of patches that are not out there. Is it as easy as putting the right patch in the right place?
I think a big piece of it is. I think that it's easy to get complacent and fixing stuff. Home Depot's got, I don't know, a couple thousand stores, right? And so upgrading the routers is a big thing, not a little thing. And not to say that routers had anything to do with this, this particular one. I don't know what the exact specification of the problem was, but so upgrading all that stuff is a big deal. You first have to do it in a test lab and test it out and make sure that it doesn't break anything when you upgrade it. And then you've got to do it 2,000 times, and it's typically not as simple as just punching a button, because if you've implemented a good security thing, then every one of your routers has different password and things like that. So then it becomes a whole lot more complex. So it's a big challenge, and I think that companies have to, if it goes back to like the guy at Fight Club, who was analyzing whether or not fixing the problem in the car that killed people was cheaper to pay off the people that got killed than it was to fix the problem, and it becomes a return on investment issue as to whether or not it's worth the effort, or whether it'd be better every 10 years to pay 50 million people because their credit cards got stolen.
But that's my accountability issue, right? Because that's what I was going to before. If you're not holding the companies to the kind of accountability that requires them to keep their system updated, right? That requires them, because Steve, you and I know, but probably Chris and David know too, that you walk into these companies and you find that there's a whole bunch of boxes in the corner that nobody's been touching because the software on it requires a special kind of operating system. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you remember we went to Minneapolis, right? You and I, and they were running Windows NT in the point of sale for that company just because they didn't want to update the point of sale software.
Yeah. Too
That
hard.
was my point about POS infrastructure just being so outdated.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the one thing that the enterprise company or the companies that are providing technology to the enterprises, be it, you know, the Microsofts, the Cisco's, or whoever, right? They need to find a way to help these companies get their systems patched more readily and more easily and faster than they are today. I mean, look at your phone, right? The new update comes out, you know, it downloads, it installs almost instantaneously, right? Think about your iPhone or whatever you may have, right? And you've got to get the enterprises to that point too, because to Chris's point, it takes them, you know, today it could take weeks, days to get their infrastructure patched, and that's just too long of a gap in time when you have such an active, you know, hacking or, you know, cyber threat risk out there, right? Where, you know, at these companies.
I think that's a great conclusion to where we are. Chris, any more words? Chris? Yes. Oh, Chris is on mute.
Sorry, I was on mute. Change your password. That's my words of advice.
Regularly.
Okay. And I'll be changing my password right now. David, what are you doing these days?
These days, I'm still working on getting our blogs up from the CTA Supermobility Show. So just busy cranking them out, trying to get them done. I should get them all posted within the next week, and then the interviews will flow afterwards.
Where can people find you?
You can find me at @DS11 on the webs.
Mr. Webster?
Just trying to keep people safe. You can find me at Move to the Cloud. Move the number 2, the cloud.
Thank you. And Chris?
See Kieff, Kieff, on the interwebs.
Terrific. And I'm Marco Giunta. You can find me at marcogiunta.com. Visit our site, techreact.com. Give me some feedback and love to hear from you. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon.